Welcome. We want to demonstrate for you how OctoJoom works on a LightSail server on Amazon. Please follow along. My name is Llewellyn and I will be your guide. OctoJoom is a bash script that really helps you manage Joomla Docker containers. It writes the Docker Composer files for you. It places them in a central folder, and it also helps you to easily enable them, maintaining your environment variables and disabling them, to reset persistent volumes, and to make other changes that you might normally have to do through command line. So it's kind of a tool to increase productivity, in my case anyway. So for all of you that are used to writing these composer files yourself, OctoJoom doesn't take it out of your hands. You're still able to go edit those files and it won't affect the functionality of OctoJoom at all. In fact, it's really just an assistant. It just helps you get things done. It's able to move projects from one server to another. It's able to manage your SSL integration. It sets up Traefik as your egress router. It is really just a helping hand to take care of things which otherwise is tedious. It is a fairly large script. If you were to open it and start scrolling through it, you'll see that it is more or less 6,000 lines. And yet it is basic, straight out of the box bash. There's nothing fancy about it. It's simply giving you the tricks of the trade. And you're able to learn a lot about the bash scripting language by just looking at how we wrote this. And you're able to understand how things work. Don't be afraid to open the bash script and try to understand how things work. The bash script was written in this way to make it easy for people to look at what is happening under the hood and to be able to learn from that and do it themselves, because in the end, terminal is just commands and bash are those commands. So yes, I would encourage you to always look at the source code, look at how we establish the baselines and set up things. The templates that we are using for the composer files are actually all here in one file. So you're able to look through the template we're using to set up Traefik, for example. You're also able to look at the template we are using to set up Trainer, which some of you may want to use. If not, it doesn't matter. If you'd like to see the container that we are using to set up Joomla, there it is. All well documented. I over-documented things. I really wanted to make it approachable for people who are not bash fluent, and that they can just read comments and try to comprehend what's happening. It also has a functionality to deploy bulk Joomla sites. Sometimes you have a team that wants to come in and do bug testing, and you want just to spin up a whole bunch of sites and have them all log in and just keep going. And this is why we add this feature. So it's quite useful to spin up many websites rapidly. And yeah, again, here is the documentation on how it's done. And so in our mind, the code is the documentation. Yet, having said that, our README file is also a very helpful place to start. It helps you set up the installation. It also explains to you some of the functionalities and should get you going with OctoJoom quite rapidly. We are constantly trying to catch kind of unexpected quirks that we normally know how to fix, and yet those who might use the script run into and get stuck. So if you run into anything like that, then please open an issue. We have an issue system, and there we would like to assist you. The issue system is managed on the main system, whereas GitHub is only a fork of the main system. Here is the main system, and there's the issues. So if you are on the GitHub page, you can just simply open the mirror over here and get to the actual main repository. This is where we really maintain the project, and so the GitHub is just a distributing network for us. So let's get to go to Amazon. If you don't have an Amazon account, then please create one. You'll have to connect your debit or credit card to the account to start really enjoying the features. I've been using them for many projects, obviously many infrastructures over the years for different clients, and I'm quite happy with the service. So I use it more readily these days than before. It's very easy to create a container here. You simply click create container. We always go with the operating system Ubuntu. It's just convenient. Everything for Bash and for all our other projects just works. And they do have release updates, and it's easy to do migration. If you prefer Debian, they're also an excellent OS. Anyway, we'll be using Ubuntu today, and we'll just take a very small system for this demonstration, and we'll call this OctoJoom testing. I think that's a good name, and click create. While our system is busy starting up, it already gave us a temporal IP address. It's temporal because if the system goes down and up again, you might get another one. If you want that system to be having a static IP address, they're actually having a feature. You could just say set static IP when you go into this container, which I could show you quickly. If we go here and manage it, you'll see under networking, there is this attached static IP. That's how you get it to become persistent. And I would suggest you do that with any system that you plan to keep running, right? So for us testing here, this is fine. I'll just add another rule here for our ports. We need this 443 as well, and also for IP version 6. And I normally remove IP version 6 port 22 access, and I normally block port 22 to a restricted IP. For those of you that are not that familiar with SSH, we have an easy connect feature which you can connect to the system by clicking on connect using SSH. This functionality makes it easy for you to get onto the server and start running commands, the commands that we'll be looking at next. Now, these commands, first they update the server and they install OctoJoom on the server, and they help you actually work with the OctoJoom interface, deploying your containers and managing your system. So it is the way to use the server is through SSH. I normally just use my own terminal, so I won't be using this path. But for those of you that are not so familiar with SSH, this is just simply the best choice. Just go ahead, click on that, use connect SSH, and you can follow the commands as I continue. Before we get to those commands though, I first like to set things up on Cloudflare. Now you might use a different location service to host your domain. The domain is naturally the address which will open your project, whatever you're going to build. We'll be using one of my domains and just set some subdomain for easy demonstration of what we're doing here today. So I'll be heading over to Cloudflare, and the domain we will be using is called vdm.dev, which is one of our development domains. And we'll be adding 2 records here. Let's see. Okay, so the first record is the IP version 4. We'll add that here, and we'll call this OctoJoom. And then we'll add another record for IP version 6, and also call that OctoJoom. So we have our 2 IP addresses set, and it is aiming at the actual container that we spun up on Amazon. So we'll get back to that. We want to add 2 more domains, and that is again IP version 6, OctoJoom DB, and also for IP version 4 the same. Sorry, OctoJoom DB. There we go. So that's just to look at the database. The database functionality is not something you have to use, but you can. And we'll look at that when we are actually setting up your project. Okay, so we have our system running on LightSail, Amazon, and we have our DNS set up here on Cloudflare. Next thing to do is to, in fact, download and install our application, OctoJoom, onto that server so we can set up our project. So we have installation instructions here for Ubuntu, macOS, Windows, and other Linux distros. We'll be using the Ubuntu installation instructions. They are normally open by default. And it's just a simple few commands which gets OctoJoom onto that system. So like I said earlier, you would now click on connect using SSH, while I'll be using terminal. The functionality of terminal is something I'm not going to explain. You can just use connect using SSH if you do not know how to use terminal yourself. So we're about to access the server. First time, it usually asks us to validate that we trust this server. And there we go. We are on the server now. I normally like to update things as soon as I arrive. So I first run the update of the update links, and then I do an upgrade, which is the actual update of the software on the server. That way I know that all the software is up to date and we can move forward. Some people skip this, they don't feel it's that relevant, and really I don't care, whatever suits you. Okay, so we can ensure that everything is up to date. We've done that. We now want to make sure everything is installed. Now I can tell you already that it is actually, everything is actually installed, but just that you can see, there we go, everything is installed and already on the latest version. So now next we're going to install OctoJoom. It basically downloads the OctoJoom file from GitHub and places it in this location. So it's a real simple task. It just moves one file from one computer to another. And there we go, that was fast. And this one here, this command tells the computer, I trust this file, you can have it execute. And so the execute command is required for this program to run. Now that that's done, OctoJoom is basically installed on this server. If we now run the OctoJoom command, which is simply the name, OctoJoom like that, it's going to start a tutorial to help set up everything. Sorry, I see I didn't swap to the to the terminal. So there it is. There we did the installation. There we added the command for giving it permission. And here we are about to run it. So it immediately starts with this tutorial. First thing it's going to ask is whether you would want to install Docker, which of course you do. OctoJoom just helps you maintain Docker Composer files, which are used by Docker to run instances on your server. So it kind of gives you the functionality that most DevOps use to maintain systems, large-scale systems, and it just makes it easy and attainable to use it in small projects as well. So we'll say yes. It'll run through the process of setting up Docker on your server. Once that's finished, it's going to ask if it can install Docker Compose, which is the extra plugin that Docker uses to interpret those files and basically deploy your Docker systems for you, your containers. So I'm going to just say yes to that as well, and it will go ahead and do that. It's usually very fast. Next, it's going to give you a little notice. You see, one of the challenges is that once you've set up Docker, we added your user to a permission group so that it can execute Docker commands without being in the sudo, being asked to enter sudo. So this is what now needs to refresh. We give you a little explanation there, but short and sweet, you have to log out of your system and back in. It's something we know we should do, and many don't, and then the first time they try the project, they fail at this point and think something's broken. Nothing's broken. It's a normal functionality. So we're going to just have you log out and log back in, and that's what we will also be doing now. So close the script. We're going to log out and then log back in. And we're ready to continue. We can now actually just open the script again. And it'll start asking us the next few steps in the installation tutorial. So this is just asking where it should place all your Docker files. You could change it to somewhere else. The defaults are usually fine. It's going to place it in the user folder in the Docker, creating a folder called Docker and place everything inside of that. And it will ask you if you can create it. If it's already existed, it will just move on. Now it wants to create a configuration file. This is just for some global configuration values, and you'll just say yes to that as well. Now the projects folder is where persistent volumes and databases are being placed, and so it's also a folder that you would want to know where it is, and we give you the option to set its path. And if you're going to back up your projects, you simply need to back up these two folders, the projects folder and the Docker folder. And by doing that, you would have backed up everything that is needed to run your projects. So there we go. You have your two folders set up. Now it's going to ask whether you are going to use Let's Encrypt. Now Let's Encrypt takes care of your SSL certificates. And it's really convenient. So I would just say yes to this if we are on a public server with a public IP address. Now, I know I said earlier that we're just using a test IP and it's not static. But by static, I mean publicly accessible. Maybe I should change the note. But anyway, we are on a public server, so we definitely want to say yes. You can run OctoJoom locally on your desktop, and then you'll say no. Now we're asking whether you'll be proxying through Cloudflare. Cloudflare proxying layer requires special handling with Traefik, because what happens is Cloudflare gives a different IP address for the domain as which the server itself is actually having. And so your normal Let's Encrypt validation to ensure that the server and the website is on the correct location and people are not pretending to be presenting your site as a spoof attack or a kind of a deception, The point here is with Cloudflare, that functionality is a little bit more complicated. Now, OctoJoom is going to take care of that. If you say yes, which we will do, it's going to actually ask you for a few things, which helps ensure that your system is going to automatically set up SSL certificates without any complications via the Cloudflare API integration. Now, this API integration is really done on the Docker Traefik layer. We're just putting the necessary keywords in files. We're not really doing anything. It's all done by Traefik and by Docker. So this is just helping us know that this information needs to be added. So we say yes. At this point, it's going to ask you for your email address, which you are willing to give to Let's Encrypt. Now, Let's Encrypt uses this email address and probably can send you an email if there's something wrong. But it is an email address that will be given to Let's Encrypt. So you have to add that email address next. Since we do not store any of your information in the composer files themselves, but instead store them in environment variable files, environment variable files are also, we manage the security of those files, that they cannot be accessed by other users on the system, and that they are secure. So it kind of separates your secrets from your configuration files, so that you could in fact give your configuration file to someone to have a look to see if the configurations are correct without exposing any of your private or secret values. So we use that for both Joomla as well as Traefik and any of the other containers you might deploy. And every time we create an environment file, we're going to tell you about it like we're doing here, saying, can we create the file? So there we go. Yes. Next, it's going to ask you for a Cloudflare API token that has a zone DNS edit permission used by the API DNS lookup for the auto-resolver of the ACME. Now, for some of you, that's like, oh no, what does that even mean? Well, it just means we're going to have to talk to Cloudflare to validate that the domain is in fact there and that it actually does belong to you. And then Cloudflare is going to say yes to Let's Encrypt, that yes, the domain is on that server, and you can in fact trust that the domain is in the, that whole chain of trust is going to work for Cloudflare. Now, I know there are some other domain service providers, in which case you wouldn't need all this. It's really when you're working with content distributing networks that has different IP addresses in front of the servers. And if any of you have systems that you would want features added, please open an issue. We'll look at it. We're very happy to assist. In this case, we just need the token. You have to log into your Cloudflare account, which is something like this. And then you'll have to go to the bottom of the page. Let me see. So you have to go to the dashboard, account home, or something similar. Depends on your account. I am accessing different companies, so I have an account page for every company. And then at the side, there is this manage account and account API tokens. You need to click on that, create a token that satisfies the requirements. So we just need edit zone DNS, the first template. It's going to force me to choose something here. So I'm going to just choose a specific zone. Let's see. So I'm using the domain that we are planning to use here. And then that's it. Say create token. And there we go. We have our token. We can copy that. And we can use this token now to set up our, to continue with the setup of OctoJoom on the server. So there's our token. We can continue. Just click OK. Tab OK. Here we're just going to add that domain. Note that I'm not adding the subdomain that we already created. I'm just adding the domain. That's important. Good. Now it's ready to set up Traefik, the Docker Compose file for it. And it's taken all that information and it's created that file for us. We can also enable Traefik right away. Okay, so now that Traefik's up and running, we can go and create our first Joomla container. So we just go set up new container. And we're just going to go with 6.0, the latest Joomla version. We're going to call this OctoJoom. It will also use this keyword for the subdomain later. We can probably change it if we wanted, but I like to just put in the name that I'm going to call the project and just keep it for all the various areas. Because there are namespacing and things that we are using this keyword for in the Docker Compose file to ensure that other containers don't collide with this project. So there's the namespace. It just used the same name. And we're just selecting a single subdomain. We could allow multiple domains. So we set up that vdm.dev. We could add more. And you can change this again later through the advanced features. I'll show you how to get to that. For now, I'm just going to say no. And this is our subdomain. See, we can change it here, like I said, but this is what we're looking for. So we go ahead. And again, we are asked, because the project set up Traefik to be using Cloudflare, we can have projects use Cloudflare or not use it. And so every time you create a project, we'll be asking you this again, so that we would set up the config in the Docker Compose file correctly to fit your needs. So we'll say yes again here. Now here, I'm just going to go with the defaults. You could read those. It just basically the information needed to set up the Joomla site. And again, we're telling you that we'll be creating an environment file. We'll be putting all that private, or let's call them secrets, into this environment file. Would you like to auto-deploy Joomla 6? Now, Joomla has a browser deployment strategy where you, in the browser, connect the database and all the necessary information. We can actually maintain that here and auto-deploy your site. So when the moment you open this website, it's already running. You don't need to enter any information, which is obviously more convenient and what we'll be saying yes. Then it will be asking your website's name, the username, and so I'm just going to go with the defaults here, but you can enter the actual specific information of your project here. If you want to install any extensions by default on your system and the zip URL to those packages of those extensions are public, you can add them here. So we're going to do that. You're probably aware of Joom Engine, or more so Joomla Component Builder, one of our main projects. I'll use that as an example. I'll be taking a package from the nightly build, and sorry, I'm not showing you that, am I? Let's see. Can you see it now? There we go. So there it is, Joom Engine. I'm just taking a link here. It's a public link. I'm copying that, and then I'm going back to the terminal, and I'm just entering the link here. That's as simple as it is. If I now click enter or tab and enter, the same will happen. I'll be asked again to enter a link, and it will keep allowing me to enter more links. So I could do this plugin, that template, this, that, and all of those I can be adding here, as long as the links are public, no login requirements, then this can work. Okay, the moment you're done adding the links you're planning to install, you just need to click again, leaving it empty, and we'll move on to the next question. Now, when you do local development, you normally would want to use a domain name instead of the IP address. Especially with Traefik, you need domain names for it to route your traffic to the correct container. And so, would you like to update your host file with each new domain you add is only required when you're actually running the system locally. If you're running it remotely, this is really not needed. So we'll just go no here. But had I been running, like I do run many of my developing systems locally, I would say yes. And then OctoJoom is going to take care of adding my domain names to my host file for me, which is very convenient. I can just open my browser and that domain would work for my system. Remember, the host file only directs traffic for the local system, and that's really the motive for doing so. And again, our Docker Compose file is being created. We can now enable that. So I'm going to say, yes, I would like to enable this Joomla container, and there we go. It's going to pull those containers down and deploy your project. Once it's finished, it will show you this configuration page, which basically gives you the password to the database, the root password it created, the place that it stored these details, as well as the database host name and the URL. If you didn't opt for the auto deployment, you're going to need this information to connect your Joomla site with the database. If the auto deployment has been selected, then this is good information. It is being stored in this location. So you technically don't need to back it up. It is backed up there under the keyword OctoJoom. So if you open this file, you'll see these values is kind of segregating the data set for yourselves to see, okay, this is for that project, this is for this project, avoiding collisions. And so there's your environment variable file. The data has been stored there. You can simply click OK at this point. And your project is now up and running. Now we've set up the domain on Cloudflare. We have created the project using OctoJoom. We've said that it's a Cloudflare project. And so next we should be able to go to the browser, open that domain, and it should just load. Now, there is a way to kind of see when it will be ready. We haven't added that feature to OctoJoom. It's really possible for you to see it via Docker, and I'll show you that next. We'll just exit out of OctoJoom, and we will basically say Docker PS, and it will show us where our system is. So both are showing healthy, and this means it's already up and running. The database is running, PHPMyAdmin is running, and Joomla 6 is running. Also, Traefik is up already 9 minutes, and we would expect that everything is now working. The first time that you open the site, it might not already have an SSL, and you need to maybe refresh it a few times. This happens. It's kind of normal. Let us see how our project has behaved. So we'll just type in here OctoJoom, and yes, it's already loaded. It's already have the secure certificate from Cloudflare, and I know that this domain specifically is set on strict. That means it expects the server as well as the browser to have SSL, and that has all been taken care of by Cloudflare because we added that API token, and it all is working. We're able to now log into our system and see it for the first time. So there we go. We've just logged in. I don't need the guide there. Yes, let's help Joomla get the information they need. And there our component was installed and it is running. So that's all it took to set up a Joomla project using OctoJoom. It took a little longer because I was taking you step by step, giving explanations, but really, it is that simple. And you're able to add another and another as long as your server actually is able to, have that capacity. You can add as many containers as you like. There's no limitations. OctoJoom can manage it. So remember I mentioned something about advanced features. Well, let me show you that. So if we go back to the terminal and we again run our script, you'll see that there is this OctoJoom settings area, and it says here switch to expert mode. There it is. Those are the advanced features. And it's within these advanced features that you're able to really do some very interesting things. You're actually able to connect to other systems. You have migration options. It is kind of explains to you how to do that if you haven't set up any configurations as that might be required. It also shows you the important paths, but that it does without being an advanced view, which are nice to know, so you can always go and find things again, and so forth. There are many cool features here, and I do encourage you to look through them. Don't be afraid. Spin up a server like I did. Play around with the application. It is really useful. We use it all the time in production as well as in local development. It takes care of a whole lot of things for us, and we keep trying to improve it. Since we're using it ourselves, we try to keep adding functionality to it that makes our systems secure, professional, and keeps up to beat with the latest changes in the market. Anyway, I'm Llewellyn. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care.